Hey, welcome back for another one of Agility Digital's segment on getting the most out of your digital technologies. Today we've got Brooke from Unsung Collective in. We're going to have a little bit of a chat around social media, what platforms you should be using, what's the best way to communicate through each of the different platforms, and really what you should be doing to look at segmenting and understanding your target personas. Morning, Brooke. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Not bad, not bad. So tell us about, I guess, obviously everyone knows about social media right now. If you don't know about it, it's a bit worrying. But tell us about, I guess, the difference between the platforms and what the difference is and the communication styles between sort of the main ones out there.
Yeah, I guess like a lot of the work we do is drilling down and identifying the right target audience, which can be done in a number of different ways. And then doing that audience analysis to work out like what their characteristics are, where they hang out, what their personas are before we look at the platforms or the channels. Because different people will hang out on different social media platforms. So it's a bit of a dead end if you're using your energy into thinking you should be using a platform, but really your audience is not hanging out there.
Yeah. So I guess all the different platforms have a preferred algorithm and what they deem being important and how they try to push that content sort of ahead and in front of others. What advice can you give to people around that?
So I guess if we start with talking about Instagram, for example, I guess when Instagram first launched, their biggest objective was that instant content, like you take a picture and upload it straight away. So there was less room for being able to refine or create that quality content because it was more about like showing what was happening in that moment. We've seen a massive shift mostly in this year about that storytelling aspect on Instagram. So instead of it being more about like snap and post, Instagram started to prioritize content where people would stop. People will stop to engage. So, what we would call maybe microblogging. So creating like longer captions. So people will stop. Instagram can identify that someone stopped on that post and will prioritize your content organically.
Yep.
Facebook, I guess, the experience I've had, it's a little bit harder to get that organic reach just because it's moved towards more of like a paid marketing platform. But there is huge trends around visually like pleasing aesthetically pleasing, I should say, content, such as your videos and your like explainer animations. And you can get a lot of return on that style of content. And then LinkedIn, I guess, is more of your thought leadership content. So when your brand or yourself as an individual wants to be a leader in the industry, so people will go there to see like industry trends and topics and things like that.
Yeah. So if, say you're your sort of business is starting out, you're just jumping into the digital atmosphere and you're like, right, I want to get out there. What's the best piece of advice that you could give to anyone in that position?
That's starting their business.
Yeah.
I think it's to really think about what your budget is. Your like whatever, however you work. I would probably like recommend a monthly budget. It's easier for you to track your return if you have like, this is what my sales targets are per month. This is what my marketing budget is per month before just jumping straight in the deep end. And I guess looking into, anyone can really like look into who their audience is just by looking at like aligning who else is in the community, or like traditional word for competitors, which I don't really believe there's competitors. I think it's all like community. So like looking at like where your business aligns in terms of the rest of your community, and you can use those different brands to see what their audiences are and where they're getting the best bang for their buck.
Nice. We always talk about, obviously, you mentioned it earlier on, mapping out that customer persona and that journey of how their mind works when they go through that whole process of making a decision on what they purchase or who they do business with. Are there sort of so many key areas around those customer personas that you think are really important that people should have a think about before they start trying to map that out?
I think being as specific as possible is really important. So you even can, if your brand, if it's say yourself or it's a business, has, people will instantly look at like the brand aesthetic rather than what the brand is. So I think working out first what your brand persona is and who you're trying to reach, and then when you do that customer mapping, segment it, look at the characteristics, like literally write like a personal profile to be like who your ideal customer might be. So it's like Jeremy, and he is between the ages of 30 and 40 and lives in Fitzroy and goes to gets his coffee from this cafe, or buys his like groceries from this supermarket. Because once you can see where that person, like that persona hangs out, or what their, I guess, their day-to-day is, then you can work out how to reach them. And, obviously there's social media, but there's always alternative ways to reach, like once you work out what someone's routine might possibly be.
Yeah, and it's funny as well, like when we worked with clients about it, and you go, okay, what's the name of this target persona? And they say things, well, it's this guy, that's this industry or whatever, but they don't actually drill down to someone's name. And I always try to say, if you can personify this person when you're building this, it's so much easier to get to understand them. And yes, you can put in a bunch of random information, like where they get their coffee from, where they do shopping or whatever. But actually, once you map this all out and stand back at it, you can actually there's some great little insights and information. And it's stereotypes are stereotypes for a reason as well. And sometimes you need to just trust that intuition and gut feeling to go through with it. But then, that's the starting point. But then once you put everything into action, that measurement of data and information then is really, really important to check out, okay, how correct were you? Are you on the money? And optimizing and changing things as quickly as you put them out, that whole method, thought of fail quick, fail safe. If something's not working, don't be afraid to go back and change it, start again, and try and adapt and overcome as well. So
I think you're right, like for a few different reasons. If you're mapping out that customer journey, one, you can identify additional collaborations. So if Jeremy, who goes to that cafe every day, like that's where like there's a touch point with him every day at that cafe, then that maybe like you should be collaborating with cafes, or and gone are the days where you could like probably do like it's always good to have a strategy, but I believe like long-term strategies are dead, because there's this keeping up with advancements in technology and changes in app development. Like it's a progressive, like if at the beginning you're unsure, like analyze that persona week to week, month to month, like adjust it, tweak it, like especially if you don't have a huge marketing budget, your spend's going to be better if you like understand where that person is, and your organic reach will be better. Yeah,
and if you don't put the tools in place to measure that continuously as well, like making sure you're watching everything, markets change so quickly that suddenly you're a year behind where the rest of your community is and where they're focusing, and so it becomes very hard to then adapt again or catch up. So if you can watch what's happening and put those metrics in place, you're able to be more fluid, I suppose, as a business and move with technology and the way that people think, trends and everything as well. So it's an exciting place to be in, but once again, it's putting those foundations in correctly, I think.
Yeah, and metrics is a good word as well, because again, I keep referring back to budget, mostly because a lot of the clients I work with don't have a lot of startup capital, so like biggest bang for your buck. And I think if you can have those metrics, and they can be really simple to start with, because you maybe it's just increase website traffic by 10%, 20%, or increase followers, depending on your objectives. Do you want to develop better brand awareness so you can be an established figure in your industry, or are you like sales driven and you want those conversions? And identifying those metrics and objectives earlier on is going to like best use of your time and energy.
No, definitely. Any sort of platforms out there as well? Like, I mean, obviously you got your social media, and you can go on there and you can run all your stuff individually in that. Any other systems out there that you kind of recommend to help support the management of those?
Yeah, so there's lots of analytical tools and scheduling tools, I think that will streamline those workflows. I know HubSpot's a really good one that can sort of take your marketing to the next level, because you can do like retargeting marketing and things like that. But at like, again, at the lower end of the spectrum, because that's kind of where a lot of my clientele are at, like using tools such as like Later and Hootsuite. Because then you're not just ad hoc posting day to day, or, waking up in the morning being like, getting stressed over marketing and social media because you don't know where to begin. Like, there's a lot of those kind of tools you could sit down. If you're starting out and you wanted to do it yourself, you could sit down for half a day and do like, a month's worth of social media and schedule it. And then again, looking week to week, you can look back on those scheduling tools or those analytical apps and see what the stats and analytics are telling you and tweak it, rather than every second day or every day jumping on and reinventing the wheel.
And do you see social media being a continuous part of a potential client's journey? So, it's not just about the attraction and finding them at the beginning. It's actually about nurturing that relationship continuously through, even after they've become a client.
Totally. So I think COVID, just in the space that I work in, has taught us the importance of online community development, especially through organic means. So social media platforms have gotten pretty smart with identifying bots. So I think there's a lot of quality in having that organic engagement daily with your audience, like knowing that maybe your key target, you have like a group of people that you've identified their influencers or personalities online, and they fit your marketing persona, or they have an audience that you want to tap into. Again, this is all through organic engagement. So learning about, where that person lives and what their dog's name is, just purely by watching their content, get to know them. So when you're interacting with them, you're not just like, hey, cool pic. You're like, maybe you've watched them, they're writing a book and you're like, hey, Jeremy, like, how's that book going? I saw you post yesterday, and getting really personal with your audience, because every touch point is like gets you closer to a potential conversion. And people like that about the online space now. I think we're all working from home, like community is important. What's a new way to create community? I think brands have a lot of potential to create online communities, and
Yeah, cool. And one, I guess, final last thing, what's the biggest mistake that you think businesses are making out there in social media at the moment?
Not having goals and objectives and like a proper schedule, like again going back to that ad hoc thinking, or that traditional style of social media thinking, where it's like, I just have to post a picture every day, and then they don't really increase their following or don't create that brand loyalty because they're not cultivating their brand or their online communities. So I think changing that mindset into being like, it's not just about social media posts, it's about like, who are you trying to target? Like, what kind of community do you want to create? What is your brand? Like, again, what are the objectives of the content you're doing? Is it to create brand awareness? Is it to generate sales, and having like a plan? It doesn't have to be like, this is what I want to do in 3 months or 6 months. It could just be for the next 2 weeks. Like, this is what I want to achieve. So you're not just like, it's a bit, I feel like startups and brands make the mistake of thinking they just willy-nilly, log on day to day and post something.
Yeah. Look, I can completely admit sometimes I'm guilty of that as well, but it's hard, and I guess that's why it's important to work with people like yourself and Unsung Collective, who can help support that as well along the way and provide advice where needed. So thanks for coming in. It was great to have a chat, and obviously, as always, I look forward to working with you again in the future.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.